Hello and welcome to our router bit video. This is Mr. Billy Brown and he's going to help me out with this router bit video today. What we're going to start with is showing you all the routers that Porter Cable makes. These are the routers that Select Products carries, and we're going to start down here with the laminate trimmer.
This is a half horsepower laminate trimmer. This router is good for just that, trimming laminate and plastic laminates. You can use it for small router jobs. This is a 1 3/4 horse. This router right here is pretty great for just about any job except for those really big jobs. This is great for medium to big trim jobs, and it can also be used in a router table, as long as you pre-cut those thick pieces of 3/4 and 1 inch MDF.
Now Billy, can you use 3/4 inch MDF on that? I mean, is that going to cause a problem? I see a lot of these routers are relatively inexpensive. Will they do the bigger jobs that we're talking about, 3/4 inch wood, plastics?
As long as you pre-cut the material,
you'll be all right
with a jigsaw.
Okay.
And of course, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the video.
Excellent.
This right here is one of the newest additions to the routers that Select sells. This router right here is great for install bay number 3. No wires, Mom. And these routers right here, Rob's going to talk a little bit about those.
This happens to be one of my favorites. I have two favorites. This is the 2 horsepower plunge. And some people get a little tricked up here with the plunge, but you have a safety switch here. And so what you want to do is bring that safety switch down before letting the trigger go. One of the features I really like about this one is it has a brake on it. So as soon as you let go of that trigger, the router stops almost immediately.
And of course, you can see that we use this router a lot in the shop.
Yeah.
It's already got some spray glue on it, so it's already installed or up.
Definitely. And it's got some fine adjustments on the sides here, so if you're going to be doing some production work and doing multiple depths, you can set your gauge here and go to town. On the back here is your release lever, so you can plunge right into the material, let go of it, and it locks it down for you. Same piece there.
Very nice router.
Yeah, very nice. And another one of my favorites, I know Mr. Brown doesn't really like this one, but I kind of like this one, and I'll tell you why.
But it's still a Porter Cable router, so I can't knock it.
One thing about the Porter Cable routers is that these are the only routers on the market to be made all out of aluminum. You can see the aluminum chassis here, but even inside, both bearings are being held by aluminum, not plastic on the bottom and aluminum on the top. A lot of the other routers are made that way, and they won't really last that long. What I really like about this one, and I hope I can get it on the camera, is you see this line right here? Let's see here, let me turn it a little bit. There you go. You see that line right there? That line, coupled with this measurement here, will allow you to spin this router to exact measurements. So you can move it 1/4 of an inch, a 1/2 inch, or even a couple of inches, and that line there will be your guide. So this is a really awesome router for a router table, although sometimes you may have to clean it a little more often than the plunge. Now, Billy, I'm going to let you do your favorite because this is the God one right here, buddy.
This is a 7539 plunge router. This router right here is excellent for router table usage. And of course, being in a router table, this router is going to be inverted, which is going to allow you to snap the thing up all in one movement. It also has the same depth gauge over here on the side, and you can adjust this for different depths. A lot of guys like to take the springs out of here when they put it in router tables because it makes it a little easier to move the base up and down to adjust the height of the bit to the workpiece. This is a great router. Same type of bearing setup. This is a power horse.
3 1/4 horses.
This right here will cut that 1 inch MDF, no problem.
One thing I do have to agree with Billy is the difference between these two routers, although they're both variable speed, both 3 1/4 horse, you never have to clean this one. So,
right.
You know, when you have it in a router table, even though the dust and dirt gets right in there, it blows it right out with its own internal fan, and you really never need to clean it.
Although it's not a bad idea to periodically blow out your switch over here that's on the handle, because this does get some dust in it, and you don't want to have any problems.
Okay, well, next thing we're going to start is we're going to get into the actual router bits themselves, and then we're going to do a little bit of cutting and see if we can't mess up this pretty shop of ours. All right, guys, welcome back, and here we are with our router bits. And I just wanted to show you briefly how many router bits. I mean, this is probably only about half the router bits that are actually made, but these are the router bits that really pertain to the car stereo industry. And Billy's going to show us about the most basic one. Billy, what's that?
This right here is the very first bit that I ever learned about. This is a plunge bit, a 2-flute plunge bit. This bit's great for general purpose cutting, especially into hardwoods. You don't have problems with it chipping woods like teak and mahogany. MDF, it cuts MDF. You have to make a couple of passes with it to avoid burning. Now this bit is 1/2-inch diameter shank, and of course the cutting length on this is 1.25 inches. There are longer lengths available. This is a 1/2-inch diameter upcut spiral bit.
Now, why do they call it an upcut, Billy?
It's because of the way that the twist is made on the spiral itself.
Gotcha.
This bit is excellent for router table usage. You do not want to use a downcut spiral bit, but you don't have to worry because Select only carries upcut spiral bits because the majority of these bits are used in router tables.
I thought that was because we were cool.
Hey. Another reason is because since this is an upcut by design, it'll actually help hold your workpiece down to the router table. A downcut would actually push that piece up, and you don't want that.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, its little brother is going to be a 1/4-inch diameter upcut spiral bit. Now, you don't want to cut the big thick material with this because it will break. You want to use the big 1/2-inch and use this for just small cutting. They're able to expel the chips from the cut better than the plunge bit. However, you're going to get a slightly frayed upper edge when you use a spiral bit by design. That's why this bit, the plunge bit, would be better for hardwoods, for you guys that have to do boats.
And for what I also understand, Billy, that the price difference of the two bits is pretty dramatic. I believe that the spiral bits probably double the price or triple the price. Is that correct?
Well,
solid carbide.
Yeah, the spiral bits are going to be solid carbide bits, and they're going to last a whole lot longer. The plunge bits have carbide cutting flutes. They're going to last long, and they both can be resharpened.
Great. Okay. Very cool. Now, give us some examples on how we can use the double fluted bit there.
Like I said, most of these are for general purpose cutting.
Okay.
Great for cutting speaker holes into woofer boxes or just speaker holes in general into panels.
Now we have a tool for that. We have it's called the circle guide.
Yeah, the circle guide right here. Let me give you a little background on the way that this thing works. You're going to have a little slide adjustment right here. It's got a little tightened down knob. And what that hooks to is a little bitty aluminum track that has a pivot point right here. This right here is going to allow you to set this into the center of your hole. And of course, your router bit will be right here into this opening right here. Now, of course, we have to fit this onto our router. So, Rob, will you take the base off of this? We're going to show you guys real quick. It's not that hard on how to assemble that. And while he's taking that apart, I want to talk a second because we mentioned 1/2-inch diameter shanks and 1/4-inch diameter shanks. Now, with these two diameters, you're going to have two different diameter collets. The 1/2-inch is what the 1/2-inch collet comes with the routers. However, you can purchase the 1/4-inch collet separately. I want to talk about how you actually insert these bits into the collets. A lot of guys make the common mistake and they push it in until it bottoms out. That's not the right way to do it. With the spiral bit, you're going to have a cut on the very, very bottom. And what you want to do is you want to position that about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch above the top of the collet itself. And this is the area that we're really concerned with. What that's going to do, that's going to give you a real good clamp on the bottom and the top. If you partially install these things in there, you take a chance of your bit breaking or it coming out of the router, and you don't want that. That would make your day very, very bad. Same thing with the 1/2-inch collet. You want to make sure that you insert the bit properly so that the cut right here doesn't go below the top line of the collet itself.
Excellent. Okay, well, I got this base off for you, Billy. Now, what do we do with this?
What I'm going to do, make it a little easier, I'm going to take this knob off of here and pull the little metal track out. And we simply are just going to take the base right off the bottom. And you definitely don't want to lose these little screws because these right here we're going to use to hold this on.
Now, Billy, can we use, like, I don't know, for instance, your baby there? Can we use that?
You can, but it's a little overkill.
Okay, all right. Well,
Probably want to stick with the smaller router and leave this bad boy right here in the router table where it belongs.
all right, cool.
All we need to do is we take and we position our base onto the bottom of the circle guide. Now, one thing you really want to keep in mind, you want to try to get this as straight as possible in here. Now, one thing that you can do is you can take your screws and you can size them up and you can find the correct size hole for the screw and you get the corresponding drill bit for that. We're going to drill those holes in there. Of course, you could do this with a drill press. Probably would work a little bit better, but drill will work just fine. It's a good idea. Once you drill one hole, stick your screw in there. That's going to stick your screw into the hole after you drill it, because that's going to keep your piece from wanting to move around on you.
It's a great idea.
Then you drill your second hole and do the same thing. You're going to stick your other screw in there, and then your third screw. And now, since we've done that, this piece will line up perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this base because we're going to probably want to use this later on.
I was going to say, do we need longer screws?
Well, I'll show you a little trick. You guys can use a countersink. The countersink is going to allow you to countersink these holes so that you can still use the same screw. Keep in mind, you want to countersink the side that has the track in it.
Right, the back side.
If you do the wrong side, you're going to have to buy a new circle guide,
Okay.
which will make Rob a happy guy. But so what we're going to do, we're going to countersink, and we're going to stick our screw in there. We're going to make sure that we got enough material coming out the other side. Once we have these countersunk and we've checked to make sure that we have enough depth, and well, this is what I'm talking about. We want to make sure that we have enough material here to bite into the base of the router. Once we have that, it's just as simple as
Mount that baby up.
lining it up and mounting it right to the router. And what I'm going to do, one thing that makes it just a little bit easier is if you stick your screws back into the base, then you can simply just line them up, and then you tighten this thing right back onto the router. It beats chasing a hole around. Nobody likes to do that.
That's right.
It's a good idea when you're tightening these up that you want to kind of move around. And what that's going to do, that's going to allow the base to seat to the base of the router nicely. Now that we have that done, we can simply go back and we can put our pivot point guide back on here and put our retaining nut back on. And now this router is set up to cut holes.
Awesome. Shall I get you a piece of wood and we show these guys how it works?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back.
Now that we have our circle guide set up on the bottom of our router, what we're going to do is go ahead and install our plunge bit. Since that's the most common bit, we're going to use that bit for our example. Now we're going to plug the router in.
Here we go. Got some power for you, Mr. Bill.
Plug it in. And what we've done, we've laid this out, and we're going to cut a circle out. Now, this is 3/4 inch MDF that we're using. And what we're going to do, just so that you guys can understand, we're only going to make a cut about halfway through the material. You want to avoid cutting all the way through the material at one time because it'll burn your bits and the life of your bits is going to be decreased. I'm going to show you a little trick. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of 3/4 MDF and we're going to tack it to the bench with some 1¼ inch brads. What this is going to do, it's going to give us a work surface so that we don't cut our bench up. our custom cardboard bench.
That's right.
Now, what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to brad nail right into the center because that's our pivot point. And we're going to put 4 brads around the outside. So now whenever we make our cut, nothing's going to be moving on us.
Now, Billy, can you use the same or similar procedure if you have the box already made? Let's say they put the whole box together. They're going to throw in that looks like a 12-inch sub. Can they use a similar procedure and just do it right on the box?
You can if you make several passes. If you make several passes, it's not going to be a problem, but you have to be aware. Whenever you get around on your final pass, that center's going to drop out, and you want to avoid the little cut on the side.
Gotcha. So you could go through, let's say, halfway on the first pass, a little bit more on the second pass, but on the third pass, cut all the way through, or could you maybe leave 10%, push it through, and come back with a little sandpaper?
Sure, you could do that.
Okay, very cool.
What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a 1/2-inch bit, and we're going to make a hole right here on the inside of our line. And that's going to allow us a little starting hole for our router bit. I'm going to loosen up the pivot point. And what we're going to do is we're going to drill an 1/8-inch hole in the center so that the pin of the circle guide has a place to insert into. We insert our bit into the hole, and we insert
down. Okay.
right in there and tighten it up. And as you can see, nothing's going to move. One thing you want to keep in mind is your rotation. You're going to want to rotate clockwise. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail later in the video. You want to make sure that you don't get your power cord in the path of the router. One cool trick that I like to use, I like to throw the cord up over my shoulder. That way, so I know that it's not going to take a chance of getting cut.
I don't know how many times I've been to retail shops and seen their saber saws and their routers sitting there with the cord half cut off.
Either that or it's got a big gob of duct tape on it. You know, a little bit fixes it, but a lot of it fixes the crap out of it.
Right.
What we're going to do, put your glasses on,
Glasses.
because I want to be able to see what I look like on this tape.
All right.
Now that I've made that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this up, and I'm going to switch it back on.
And the smoke settles.
You let it stop all the way, and you can remove it. We want to make sure that we got all the way down into our cut. And we're cut all the way through. So now, we can separate these pieces from the workbench. What we can do is we can use a panel tool, and we can actually just pry this up, knock the dust off,
Nice.
and bam. We don't have that little problem over here. It's a great technique, great little trick for making jigs. And of course you can use it for cutting holes in your speaker boxes.
Okay, excellent. We're going to clean up our mess here, and then we're going to come back and move into flush trim router bits. So just give us a minute. All right, guys, here we are with Mr. Brown again, and we're going to be talking about our router bits. And geez, Billy, you know the most common question at any of our shows is look at all those router bits. I mean, what do they all do? That's what everybody wants to know. And you know, we've been installing for a number of years. Where do you start?
Yeah, you know, you can get kind of overwhelmed at first. You look at it. If you opened up a drawer and you had all these bits to choose from, you know, common question is, hey, what's the right bit for the right job? So what we can do, you know, we can start by just going through process of elimination. We're going to go through here. We're going to start with the basic flush trim bit. That's what we're going to start with. Now, flush trim bit does just that.
Flush trim.
Yeah, I'm sure you got a jig somewhere in your shop,
Oh,
right?
come on. Yeah, we got a few jigs around. Here's one I'm not so proud of, but we use it on our show cart.
It pretty much covers the basics. And what we got here is Rob's gone in and he's just tacked a couple of pieces in. And if you notice that these are separate pieces, it's a circle, he's got a small thing, and he's got a ring. And what he's done is he's attached this to another workpiece, And he's actually used a flush trim bit, and the bearing pilots around the jig, which is mounted on the top. And of course, the cutter is the same diameter. It's the same diameter as the bearing, so it makes an exact copy. And that's what it does, flush trim.
Okay.
You can use this for like just general purpose flush trimming, making copies of jigs. If you have like that edge of your box that sticks over just a little bit, the flush trim bit to the rescue. It'll trim it right off.
And as opposed to starting with plexiglass, you can make your jig out of wood.
Because wood's a whole lot cheaper than plexiglass.
Any shape you want. Yeah, wood's a whole lot cheaper than plexiglass. Make your cut like we did here. We took a couple pieces of wood, got a shape, mounted it to a piece of acrylic, and then flush trimmed it out, and it came out really nice.
Right, and wood's a whole lot easier to machine than the plexiglass.
And if you mess it up, you just throw it away.
Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of talk you guys through some of the router bits. And we're going to start with the flush trim bit. We've pretty much covered the flush trim bit. This one has two cutting edges, and those cutting edges are called flutes. And router bits are available with multiple flutes. You can get them with 2 flutes, which is the most common. You can get them with 3 and even 4 flute. The advantage of multiple flutes is that you're going to get a smoother cut. Of course, the trade-off is going to be a less aggressive feed rate. You're not going to be able to cut your material so fast.
Now, why would you use a triple flute?
Plexiglass.
Plexiglass?
Yeah,
Nicer finish.
Because you want to have a real smooth cut, and if you have a smooth cut, it's going to minimize your sand time. And every installer out there knows that any good car, you probably got more sanding in it than you do fabrication time.
Okay, gotcha.
This is a bottom mount bearing, 1/2-inch diameter flush trim bit.
Wait a second here, Billy. That's on the bearings on the top, man.
I'll tell you what, Rob. Hand me that router over there for 1 sec. So, common question that everybody always asks. Yep. But if you look at a router and you have that very same flush trim bit set up inside of the router, now the bearing's on the bottom. So all of the terminology is based on the router being used in a handheld application.
Okay. So in order, so I don't get confused, can we just like hang this on the table like that? I guess not. That won't really work, will it?
Now, our bearing, of course, is the same diameter, which is going to allow us to have that
So
flush
that's
trim.
inch. Now, the other one, what is that, a 3/4 inch?
This one's going to be 3/4, but there's a little bit of a difference. If you notice, you can look at the shank, and you can look at the cutting edge, which is the flute. You notice how this is at an angle. This is an up shear flush trim bit. Just as before that we talked about up cut and down cut spiral bits, you have up shear and down shear bits. You only want to use up shear bits.
Gotcha, because the bit's upside down in the router actually pulling the material up.
Right. In a handheld application, you can see where this cutting edge is pointing upward.
Okay, gotcha.
In a router table application, you got to keep in mind that the router bit spins counterclockwise. So if it spins counterclockwise, it's going to hold and clamp the workpiece to the router table.
Awesome.
If it was the other way, push it right up in your face.
Fighting you the whole time. I got
Right. And of course, with the 3/4 inch diameter, you're going to get a little different corner radius, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. Moving on, we have the flush trim spiral bit. Just as the spiral that we had before, but with the addition of the bearings on the top. This bit right here is excellent for plexiglass because of its ability to expel the chips from the cut. These bits are
quite a bit more expensive.
These bits are quite a bit more expensive than the average flush trim bit because they're solid carbide. Gotcha. And they are the workhorse of your router bit collection.
Now, if you would take into consideration the time savings, if we were going to do, let's say, a couple of 12-inch holes, can you do it in half the time if you were doing plexiglass versus MDF, or where's the time savings? Where's the benefit in using the spiral versus just a dual flute?
What this bit's going to do is going to cut down on your pre-cut time. Just for the fact, instead of you having to go in and pre-cut your workpiece to remove that excess material, this bit right here is going to do it for you. Since it has such an aggressive twist to it, it has the capability of removing and expelling those chips from the cut much better than you would with a straight flute bit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, all of these bits, whenever they show up at your store, you're going to notice that this one's all nice and shiny. And this one right here in my left hand, it's got this plastic coating on it. With spiral bits, you want to be very careful. If you just go in and start twisting this off, you're going to cut your finger. It's a good idea to use a razor knife and you just trim into it, make yourself a little cut into the side of it, and voila, it comes off.
Oh, what is that protective coating for, Billy?
This is just a wax coating, and what it's on the router bit for is that it prevents the carbide from chipping off. Even though carbide's very tough and it's great for cutting wood, it's very, very fragile. And if you throw your bits in a drawer with other bits and they bump and roll around in each other, they're going to chip and they're going to break, and you don't want to use chipped and broken bits. So what I would recommend is recommend the router lockers, which is going to allow you to put your bits in. You can keep them organized in an upright manner and away from each other, and at one glance you can see where all your tools are.
That's awesome. Yeah, we use a couple of these in our shop, hang them on the wall, and just lock our bits right into them, and they're always there.
That's another thing too, is that you can take and you can slide these together, and now you have all of your bits on one tray. You can mount this to a piece of wood, you can mount it to the wall, you can put it in the drawer of your shop. It's a great, great addition.
Awesome.
We've talked about the bottom mount bearing flush trim bits. Let's talk a little bit for a second about top mount bearing flush trim bits. I'm going to remove our protective wax so that we can get a little better look. Remember the terminology of the router bit. It's based on this router bit being mounted in a handheld application, so that would put the bearing on the top.
So this is a true top bearing router bit.
This is a true top bearing router bit, and this one is 3/4 inch in diameter. So this right here is going to really be able to cut some material, no problem. This bit would be used if you had your circle jig that we made before.
Okay.
And you wanted to take this circle jig and you wanted to mount it to your woofer box because you had it already made for a particular sub that your shop sells. And you use this, and the bearing is going to pilot right around on the jig, and of course the cutter is going to cut into your woofer box and make the cut for you.
So theoretically, you could hang this on the wall in your shop, and whenever you need it, grab it, put it on the box.
Yeah, just make sure that you mark your jigs accordingly.
And
saves a lot of time.
One of the plunge bits, one of the plunge routers, would be perfect for that because you can push right into it,
Exactly.
cut your hole, be done with it. Time savings. Okay.
Definitely. Now moving on, we're going to be a flush trim bit with the addition that it has 2 bearings at the top with a retaining nut. This bit right here is excellent if you wanted to make an enlarged copy of a jig. Granted, you can use this bit as a flush trim bit and it would make an exact copy, but if you needed to enlarge that copy, this is going to be the excellent bit. And you can use the collars, the oversized collars. And this is the set that Rob has right here. Now granted, you have to keep in mind it shows up in a bag and you'll have to make this.
It doesn't come like this. Billy built this beautiful collar set that you can hang on the wall, and it shows you all the different profiles for all 21 pieces that come in the collar set. And this really speeds up production when you're working with the plexiglass, working on the AAMP rack, and it's all yours, buddy. Billy, hand it back to you.
And this also helps you organize your pieces. If you have all of these, all of the collars just thrown inside of a bag, it's very hard. You have to pour them out onto your workbench. You have to sift through them and find the right one and make a test cut. This takes all the guesswork out for you. And this is quite an investment to buy this set, and you surely don't want these things to roll underneath the bench or just get plain lost and swept up and thrown in the garbage. And also you can walk up, and if you have to rabbet a piece, you can actually look at the profile and you know what the size is. You can actually measure it.
Expect ahead of time.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Now these right here can be used on the double bearing flush trim bit.
All right.
The double bearing flush trim bit allows you to use oversized collars. You simply just remove the retaining nut off the top with a 10mm wrench. Keep in mind that you have a small washer. Now, here's the collar set right here that you can use with the rabbet bit, the super rabbet bit, which we're going to talk about next. These collars will fit onto the flush trim bit, which will produce an oversized cut.
Wow, so you can make duplications of a larger or smaller, whatever you're working on, any kind of jig, you want to cut into it with a different diameter, you're all set to go there.
Right, you can use this bit as a flush trim bit, and with the addition of the oversized collar, you can now make an enlarged copy of a jig.
So just hypothetically speaking, if we had an 8-inch hole we wanted to make smaller, this is the way to do it.
Right, you could find the right size collar, put it on here, you could use a 10-inch jig, and you could make an 8-inch hole.
Cool.
Of course, there's other uses for it. Now, one thing that you're going to probably want to purchase would be a bearing kit. And the bearing kit is going to come with some extra washers, an extra Allen wrench, and extra dust washer and screws. This is a lifesaver. If you lose a little bearing and you get held up on a job, this right here is your rescue kit. What we're going to need from this kit is a 3/8-inch diameter bearing. And what this bearing is going to do is we're going to put it on top of one of the 1/2-inch bearings that come with this double bearing flush trim bit. We simply put our oversized collar on, and we put the other 1/2-inch bearing in, put our retaining washer and retaining nut.
All ready to go there.
And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tighten this up. Now, if you tighten this up in your hand, these edges are very sharp and they'll cut you. A little trick that I like to use is I like to take a rag, and I like to wrap the bit with a rag, and then I put my wrench back on there. It allows me to get this very, very tight, and our collar spins freely. If you don't put the 3/8 bearing in there, this is going to tighten up and it's not going to spin, and you want this to spin.
Yes, and you never ever want to use pliers on any of your router bits.
You don't want to chew these shanks up. Very, very, very good point. Because if you mar this up, then the collet is not going to clamp on it as efficiently as with it being smooth.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that right there is going to move us right into our rabbit bit. And the rabbit bit, there's 2 rabbit bits that are available. The first rabbit bit is going to be the 49-360. This bit right here has fixed cutting edges, and you can still use the same oversized collars in the collar set, so you can produce different size rabbits, ranging from flush trim all the way up through 3/4 of an inch. This bit right here is very economical, and a lot of shops buy this bit. If you do a lot of cuts, what you're probably going to want to do would be to purchase the RC 49-360. And as you can see, this bit right here gets used in this shop quite a lot.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite bit there, Bill.
What does the RC stand for? Replaceable cutters.
And they're also reversible. They're not only replaceable, but each blade has 2 cutting surfaces on it, so you actually can take it off and spin it around, because on the inside there's also a blade. So you can get 2 uses out of these blades. Call us up, we'll send you another set for a small fee, and you're ready to go 2 more times.
So it's a much better way. Whenever you make the investment in buying the replaceable cutter, you're going to be able to replace those blades over and over and over again at a fraction of the cost of replacing the whole blade. Not to mention, let's look at these 2 router bits side by side. If you notice that one of these is round and one of them has squared edges. This would be a prime example of an anti-kickback, and this would be a prime example of a conventional style bit. Let's talk about a conventional style bit for a second. If we were going to make a rabbit into a piece of material, see how this flat edge can hit against this material? And you have to keep in mind the bit is spinning. If you were to overfeed this material in, the material can get caught on that flat side and actually kick it back. With the anti-kickback design, since the body of the bit is round, a kickback is minimized because the body of the bit is the same as the cutting edge, which is going to minimize the chance of the material being kicked back toward the user.
Especially with a bit that large, You're not going to want it kicking you back, that's for sure.
And keep in mind, you want to reduce the RPM setting on your router to about 18,000 RPMs when you're using these bits that are 2 inches in diameter.
Exactly right.
Another bit that we want to talk about, and this right here is probably the crown jewel of the installer's router bit collection, and this is the inlay bit. It basically is a rabbit bit that is 7/8 of an inch in diameter, and this bit comes with three different bearings that produce 3 different sized rabbits. And right here in our set, we included these 3 different size bearings. The different sizes are 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, and 3/16 of an inch.
Now, Billy, those measurements are so familiar in the car audio industry. I mean,
1/16 of an inch would be the thickness of vinyl.
exactly.
1/8 of an inch would be the typical thickness of carpet. And 3/16 of an inch would be a combination of carpet and vinyl.
Gotcha, and you can even use it on cloth as well.
Right. If you guys
Excellent.
still want to put tweed in your cars, or if you still want to do,
Hey, I have tweed in my car.
hey, your car looks cool.
All right.
Now, another thing that you could use this for, you can still use it as a rabbit bit. You can still use it for countersinking, you can still use it for countersinking like tweeter cups. Because this bit is so small, since it's 7/8 of an inch in diameter, it'll fit inside of a hole as small as a tweeter, or 3-inch, or 4-inch. Very, very good.
Awesome.
Also, you can use rabbit bits for another purpose in the car audio industry. You can use it for reducing panels down in size. If you were to rabbit a panel and then flush trim that panel, you can change the size of that panel uniformly by the degree of the rabbit. Simply put, once you make the rabbit and you turn the workpiece upside down, the rabbit pilots along the stepped edge, reducing the panel down uniformly.
All right, so are we done with the collar set? Almost?
You can keep all of your tools, like your Allen wrench that comes with your inlay bit, your Torx wrench that comes with your rabbit bit for replacing your blades, and you can also use it to hold your extra bearings and your little spacer. And it also comes with a little bitty wrench down here for changing the collars. By using the rabbit bit without a collar installed will produce a 3/4 inch rabbit.
Is that just these bearings alone?
That's just the 1/2 inch bearings installed with no collar.
Gotcha, so I can almost do this and demonstrate the cutter.
Right.
All right, awesome. So what, Billy, I mean, we've touched on all of our straight bits pretty much. We covered the rabbit bit. Now we have all these funky shaped bits. I mean, what's all this about?
Roundover bits is what we're going to talk about next. And as you can see, we have a different radius roundover bit depending on what type of roundover or bullnose you want to put on a piece of material. You can simply just look at the profile of the router bit, and that's the type of cut you're going to get. Now, depending on the size and thickness of material is going to determine which roundover you want to use. They're very good for MDF. They're very good for plexiglass, just about any kind of material.
Now you can see we have a variety of shanks as well, so you can use different routers on them.
Right, we have 1/4 inch shanks, and of course, the most common 1/2 inch shanks. Really just to fit whatever type of router that you have if you have the corresponding collet.
Now, would it be safe to operate these in the laminate trimmer per se?
As long as you're using 1/4 inch shank and you don't exceed a 3/8 radius.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
what you're going to really be dealing with there is the overall diameter of the router bit versus the opening on the bottom of the router.
Gotcha.
Now, with the increased size in shank diameter, you can use these to round over like subwoofer boxes, to round the edges of the sub boxes over to give it a real custom look.
Exactly. Yeah, it makes the carpet look real nice as it curves over as opposed to the right angle.
Right. The flush trim bits are available in different diameters. 3/8" diameter, 1/4" diameter, and also the newest 1/4" diameter flush trim spiral and 8" flush trim spiral. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is not a true bearing. This is basically a sleeve, and you would only want to use this to go back and trim the edges of like ABS plastic or laminate.
Really lightweight work. You don't want to use that for cutting anything big.
Just fine trimming of trim panels. And then, of course, we have the 1/2" diameter with 3/4" cutting length. And as you can see, all of these different diameters, different lengths, and different types of cutters are really going to fit the application. Back into our top-mounted bearing flush trim bits. This one has the masking still installed on it, and it is an inch cutting length. And of course, we have its little brother, which has a 1/2" cutting length, both of which are top mount bearings because the bearing's right here at the very top where the shank's at. The next bit.
Before you move on there, Bill, now, why would we use this top mount bearing versus the one that you showed us earlier? I mean, there's some pretty substantial differences in those two. Do they do the same application? Man, there's a huge difference just by looking at them.
Well, with the cutting diameter is going to be the most important thing.
Gotcha.
The very first bit that we looked at, this bit here, is 3/4 inch cutting diameter. Of course, the cutting edge on it is 1 inch long. When we look at this bit right here, and of course, we need to remove the masking on it. With this bit is going to be 1/2 inch in diameter with a 1 inch cutting length.
So mainly it's designed for smaller jobs as opposed to bigger jobs.
This would be definitely the choice of bit for a smaller job, or if you had a top-mounted jig, a jig that you actually stuck to your workpiece and you wanted to cut in a shape or an opening for another piece to insert into. You can also use this bit for making dados. So if you wanted to make like a little groove into your work table, you could use this bit to do it by simply sticking your jig across the top with some double-sided tape.
Gotcha. Okay.
The double-sided tape, you guys, the double-sided tape that Select carries, it's probably some of the best stuff that I've used. And that's going to be the Kent double-sided tape. This stuff right here, unlike some other tapes out there on the market, the masking's real easy to pull off. So attaching a jig to a piece of plexiglass to machine, this is the stuff that you want to use. You can also use it for everyday stuff like, you know, sticking a modulator controller onto the dash. It's a great tape.
Awesome.
I'm going to show you real quick, just for those guys out there that want it to be demonstrated.
Yeah, let's see a demonstration here.
We're going to stick some tape onto a piece of material, and we're going to rub it down, and we're going to cut it. It's a good idea to cut your tape away from here to prevent from wasting the whole roll. What you can do is you can use your Olfa knife, which Select also carries. Great stuff. Stick it in the edge. Bam.
Wow.
Pulls right off. No more flicking and trying to get it and cussing and having to worry about a customer coming in and going, man, why you talk like that? You kiss your mother with that mouth?
Okay. All right, so basically in summary, we've got the 1/4 inch shank bits that are made for the lighter weight products, the lighter weight jobs, 1/2 inch for the real production.
Right.
Okay.
Now, let's don't forget, last but not least,
Yes.
chamfer bits.
Chamfer.
Chamfer.
Some guys call them 45 degree.
They're available in different
25.
degrees. You can get them in 22.5. Different degrees will produce different angles. The angle is basically determined by the angle of the cutting flute in reference to the shank of the bit itself. These are great for beveling plexiglass. They're great for beveling MDF. It's just a good bit all the way around. And this little brother right here, which would be a bevel bit. The bevel trim bit, this is excellent for laminate. So instead of having that sharp edge that you cut your fingers on, this right here would eliminate that edge. This is actually a 15-degree bevel.
Gotcha. Okay, and have we covered every single bit here? I think we've covered just about all of them. Now you have this little tiny one here that I think we should just really point out. You have one over here that doesn't have anything on it. This is the 1/4-inch flush trim dual flute, and we must stress that this is only for cleaning out corners. And we have a jig, Bill, that we can show for making radios. And as we all know, if you're going to do a flush trim or make a jig for a radio, it's not going to have a 1/2-inch radius. You want to have a nice 1/4-inch tight-in radius, and that's the bit to use to give you this nice radius. After you cut it all, you go back and just do a little touch in the corners with that bit.
Right, you want to start with a larger bit. You would want to start with a larger flush trim bit to make your initial cut. And then you would want to go back and do the fine trim on the edge.
There you go.
Since this bit right here is so small in diameter, you take a chance of this bit breaking. And you let the larger bit do the work for you, and then go back and trim your corners out.
Sounds great.
Now, I think we should show these guys how to use this on a router table.
Yeah,
let's get this table out of the way.
All right. While Billy's moving that stuff around, I'm going to tell you about the router tables. These are the router tables that we build, and you can get the dimensions on our website. That's selectproducts.com. It holds a 3.25 horsepower router. It's got a really nice top to it. You can do all the bits, anywhere from the 1/4-inch all the way up to the 3/4-inch. Has an HDP top, that's high density polyethylene, Billy. Billy made these for us, and they're just beautiful. And we're probably going to be making the tops for you guys, but the bases are fairly easy to do. So what's our next mission?
Next thing that we're going to do, remember the jig that we had earlier? We're going to make a copy of this jig, and I've already put the double-sided tape onto the piece. And we're going to make it into a piece of acrylic. Now, the tricky thing about cutting acrylic is we have to pre-cut it with a jigsaw. All right, Rob.
What are we doing now, Mr. Brown?
Go ahead and take that.
Can I keep this?
Sure.
All right. That's what I like about Billy Brown. He comes and brings stuff and leaves it here.
All right.
What's with the styrofoam cup, man?
This is jiggy foam.
Jiggy foam, huh?
Don't cut your benches. Don't cut your garbage cans.
Some good stuff, man. I don't know. How does it work?
Well, since it's 6 inches thick, the jigsaw blade just cuts into it.
Oh, so I get to try out my new cordless?
Yes, you do.
We don't need no stinking cords, man.
Yeah.
All right.
What I've done is I've traced the jig out onto a piece of 1/2-inch acrylic and drill a pilot hole. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hang this up. We're going to go ahead and cut this. Now, how many times have you guys ever tried to cut acrylic with a jigsaw and it just always melts right back behind the blade?
All the time.
A little trick, a little bit of air. You might have to recruit somebody to help you come over and blow some air right on your blade as you're making your cut. Now, anytime that you're having to do multiple cuts where you have an inside cut compounded by an outside cut, you always want to do the inside cut first so that you can maintain this outside material.
Now, how close are you going to come to those lines with your pre-cut?
I'm going to cut about 1/8 of an inch away from the line. And what that's going to do, it's going to make a nice clean cut with the router bit. It's not going to have to remove all of this material.
Gotcha. All right.
Right. Got us a brand new blade in here too, by the way, which makes things a whole lot better. All right. So now we have our piece rough cut inside and outside, and we left the lines about 1/8 inch away. 1/8 an inch away is how far we cut it from the final mark. Now we can go ahead and attach our jig
To our router shield.
to our router shield.
This is a router shield. Mark Fukuda, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard that name before. He invented this router shield, and it's great safety. If you have one or can get your hands on one, call him up and say, "Hey, Mark, we want one of your router shields." I'm sure he'll get one to you. And it's made out of polycarbonate. Has a pair of handles on it. You use the two-way tape with your what am I thinking of here? With your jig and go around the router table, and it keeps the bearings or flying debris away from you so you don't have to worry about getting hit.
Now we've already put our double-sided tape on here, and as before, just give it a little flick and pull it right off.
You must own stock in that two-way tape company, as much two-way tape as you use, buddy.
Yeah, use it. I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna stick it onto the router shield first, and then we're going to stick it onto the pre-cut plexiglass that we already have.
And since you use the tape on the inside and the outside, the router shield is actually going to make it even more sturdy, so you won't get the flex that you would normally with the MDF.
Right, because that centerpiece
It's
of
barely
this
held on
particular jig is only going to be bridged together right here.
there. Quarter-inch piece.
So the shield actually helps hold all this together.
What that jig is for, so everyone knows, it holds a 6.5-inch driver with a center-mounted tweeter. So later on, we'll drill a hole in the center there, and we'll have an acrylic grill, if you will, that'll hold the tweeter.
Now, one thing that's going to make this cut right here really unique is that we have an inside cut and we have an outside cut, a female and a male cut. And as you can see, we made some little notes up here for a male cut and for a female cut. The male cut has an arrow that points this direction, and that's the path that the router bit is going to take around the workpiece. For the female cut, we're going to make just the opposite path. And that right there is because of the rotation of the bit in the router, which is counterclockwise. Just come over here, and we're going to use a 1/2-inch diameter flush trim bit with a single bearing on the top. Now, it's very important that you guys make sure that these cap screws for the bearings are tight, because there's nothing worse than to start a cut and the bearing come off and mess your piece up.
Luckily for you, you'd have the router shield or a face shield, safety glasses on to protect you, but you'd have to start all over, so that's a good thing to do.
Tell you what, let's use a face shield for this, that way so we don't get all that stuff in our face. How's that sound?
I'll just stand back then.
Now, what we could do to demonstrate the shaping bit, now that we've made the flush trim, we can use a round over or a chamfer on the inside of this. Now, one thing that I like to do, especially when you're working with acrylic, it's a good idea to sand this with some sandpaper before you do a round over, just so that you can knock some of the rough edges off of it. So what we'll do is we'll do that, and we'll go ahead and we'll set up for the round over.
For a round over.
Make that cut. Okay, we already have our bit set up. We have a round over bit set up here and a chamfer bit set up there. And we're going to leave our workpiece attached to the shield through the whole machining process. So what we're going to do is go ahead and we're going to do our chamfer first on the inside. Dust collector. Now we're going to go right to the outside and do the outside. Can you get a close-up on that? It changed the shape of it. Now granted, we're going to have to go back and do a little bit of sanding. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a round over on the outside. Okay, what we can do now is we can go ahead and separate everything. You can just use a little panel tool and very carefully separate it. This tape sticks very good, but it also releases very good. And of course, we got to do a little bit of sanding to our piece. We have a chamfer on the inside and a slight round over on the outside. And of course, you guys can watch the polishing plexiglass video, which will go a little more into detail about finishing this piece. Okay, what we're going to do now, earlier we talked about uses of a rabbet bit. I'm going to show you one of the most common uses. Actually, it's two common uses for the rabbet bit. One's going to be actually making a recess for like a subwoofer to countersink into, or to make a hole larger in size. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the hole that we made earlier in the video. And I've set the rabbit bit up with a collar. And what I've done was, of course you'd probably want to use a scrap piece of wood for this. I made a rabbit in here just so that I could see what it was. And it's always a good idea to use a scrap piece of material before you actually go and use your workpiece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this rabbit bit to rabbit this hole out. If you were doing a very deep rabbit, it's always a good idea to either make several passes or start with a smaller collar first so that you can remove as much material prior to the final cut. It's going to be safer and it's going to save your bit. So we're going to go ahead and start cutting this. Now that we've made that cut, what we have is basically a rabbit that's been formed. Right? And like we said, that can countersink a sub. Well, here's another unique use for a rabbit bit. If we take this over and we use a flush trim bit, I'm going to make a small cut in here so that everybody can see. You're basically going to flush trim that stepped edge away, making the hole larger. So I'm going to go ahead and blast that out. So now we just increase the size of that hole. The same process works for outside cuts. Of course, this would be an inside cut. So if you wanted to make a panel smaller in size, you could use the same technique. Rabbit the panel first, flip it over, and then flush trim it. It's a great trick for making clearances and tolerances for vinyl and carpet for inserts.
All right, guys, we're getting down to the end of our router bit video, and Billy Brown's got a few extra items to show us. What are they, Billy?
The digital caliper.
Oh, I've seen one of those.
Yeah. How much you think the guys pay for these things on tool trucks?
I've seen them on Snap-on trucks for like $199.
Yeah, sometimes up to 250 bucks. It's a digital caliper.
But wait, if you buy now.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
It'll measure up to 6 inches, inside, outside. It's a great tool to have for those trim rings around EQs, radios. It's a great piece. Not to mention you can buy it for a fraction of what you would pay on a tool truck. And it even comes with an extra battery. Batteries are included with this piece and the case.
Excellent.
Now for anything that's going to exceed 6 inches, the Select Products machining caliper. This caliper will measure up to 24 inches. Now you can use it for measuring square fixtures or round fixtures. And what's the most common round fixture in the car stereo world?
Speaker, that's for sure, man.
So it takes all the guesswork out of measuring for woofer holes. You simply just place it around the speaker, and next thing you know, it gives you the exact hole that you need. You can also take it a step farther. Not only will it measure for cutting the hole, you can measure the outside so you know exactly how big to make the countersink.
All right.
It's a great tool. It's made out of aircraft aluminum. All the screening that's on here is all screened and etched into it, so you don't have to worry about it scratching off. It's a great addition to your toolbox.
All right.
Now, we also talked about all of the collars. These collars will do increments of 1/16, from 1/16 all the way through 3/4 of an inch. But what do you do about the in-between sizes? Fine line trim tape. This right here is like magical. What you do is you simply just apply the trim tape to either the collar or to the bearing of a flush trim bit, or for that matter, any of the router bits. And it'll give you an offset. It's great for allowing for tolerances such as vinyl or cloth or even carpet if you want to.
Gotcha.
And usually I'd say about 8 to 10 wraps will usually cover any variations in vinyl thicknesses, and up to 12 will do cloth.
That's right. I remember seeing that in your seminar for video headrests. You
Right.
use that.
It gives you a perfect fit in the monitor into the headrest every
Oh,
single
that's
time.
wonderful. Alrighty, guys, we're going to bring this baby to a close. This has been our router bit video. We've covered just about everything for you, telling you about the routers and the bits and how they're used, showing you as much as we can how they're used. You know how to get in touch with us. Give us a call here at Select Products or go to selectproducts.com. Billy, I want to thank you for coming out and giving us some of your time.
Been a good time.
All righty, man. We'll see you guys next time.